Arif woke before dawn, long before the city's hum reached his small room. Soft morning light slipped through the thin curtains as he slipped out of bed. The single wooden slat that passed for a window rattled slightly in the breeze, and he paused to listen. All he heard was the distant call to prayer and the faint rustle of leaves outside. His mother slept on the narrow cot beside him, her breath shallow but steady. He smoothed the blanket over her shoulders and left the room quietly so as not to disturb her rest. By the time the sky began to turn soft pink, Arif was on his way out the door. His school uniform hung neatly over his arm, but first he carried a small tin box containing black polish, brushes, and a rag. The box was almost as old as he was, and its metal edges were worn smooth from years of use. He tucked it under one arm and stepped onto the dusty path that led out of his family's courtyard. The ground was cool against his bare feet, but he did not mind. He was used to small discomforts, small things that made his day feel fuller when he overcame them. The narrow alley where he lived gave way to a wider street, and soon he found his usual spot beneath the shade of a neem tree. Nearby, a row of rickshaws stood idle, their bright paint chipped in places. The city was still quiet here, but the air smelled faintly of frying onions and fresh bread from a small bakery down the road. Arif placed his tin box on a low wooden stool and arranged his brushes with care. He ran his finger along the handle of the largest brush, remembering how his father had given it to him before he passed away. It felt like a precious gift, and he treated it as such. Arif took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his mother, about her smile when he handed her a glass of water, or when he tidied the one small room they shared. Her cough had come 2 years ago after a long illness, and since then she needed medicine he could not always afford. Every coin he earned went first to her medicine, then to the rice and lentils that filled their bellies, if there was anything left. He saved it for school books or pencils. His school uniform still looked neat because he washed it every night and dried it under the same neem tree. It was not fancy, but he wore it with pride. The first customer arrived just as the sun began to rise fully. A middle-aged man stepped out of an old sedan, setting down a briefcase with a leather handle. He smiled at Arif, greeted him with a nod, and bent down so the boy could see the worn leather of his shoes. Arif's heart fluttered with gratitude. He spread a newspaper on the ground to catch stray drops of polish, then dipped his brush into the tin and began working. His motions were smooth and practiced. He moved the brush in small circles, buffing each shoe until it gleamed. As he worked, he chatted softly with the man. He asked about his day, and the man told him he was on his way to an important meeting. Arif listened respectfully, nodding at the right moments. When he finished, the shoes shone like new in the man's eyes. Lit up, he handed Arif a few coins and patted him on the head. "Thank you," he said. "You do fine work, young man." Arif beamed, tucking the coins into a small pouch tied around his waist. Customer after customer followed. Some hurried, barely pausing to greet him. Others took a moment to watch him work, admiring how carefully he handled each brushstroke. A young schoolteacher even stopped and offered him a piece of sweet pastry from her bag. Arif accepted it with a shy smile, biting into the soft sweetness between polishing shoes. It was a small treat, but it warmed his insides more than the morning light. Throughout the morning, the street slowly came alive. Vendors set up stalls, calling out prices for vegetables, spices, and fresh fruit. A fruit seller passed by, balancing a tray of mangoes on his head. The scent of ripe mango drifted toward Arif, and he imagined the taste of juicy sweetness on his tongue. He told himself he would buy one only after his mother's medicine was paid for and his own notebook was replaced. He held his breath and chased away the hopeful thought. Needs came before wants. By midday, his fingers were stained black from the polish, but he did not feel tired. He felt proud. Each polished pair of shoes was a small victory. Each coin was another step toward his goals. He counted the coins in his pouch carefully, making sure not to lose any. Then he cleaned his brushes by wiping them on old rags and placed everything back into his tin box. School came next, changed into his uniform under the shade of the neem tree, folding his street clothes neatly. A group of other children, all with satchels slung over their shoulders, waved at him, and joined him on the path to school. They greeted him warmly and laughed about the math test they had that afternoon. Arif smiled and joined in their chatter. But his mind was partly with his mother, hoping she had eaten something and that her cough had not woken her too often through the morning. The school building loomed ahead, its walls painted a pale yellow that had faded over the years. He hurried inside, finding his desk in a classroom that hummed with the soft murmur of voices. His teacher, a kindly woman named Mrs. Latif, greeted him at the door. "Good work today, Arif," she said quietly, handing him back a notebook with neat handwriting. Inside, she had corrected his arithmetic sums, marking each one with a small tick. "Keep it up," she added. Arif's chest tightened with relief. Good grades meant more chances for a scholarship, more chances to help his family in the long run. Lessons began, and he focused intently on each word his teacher spoke. He was determined not to let his situation slow him down. He wanted to learn everything he could. He scribbled notes quickly, raising his hand when he had a question. Classmates admired his dedication, though they did not know the full weight of his worries. They saw only a boy eager to learn, always kind and always polite. When the final bell rang, Arif gathered his books and stepped outside. He headed straight back to his shoe polishing spot, switching back into his street clothes. The afternoon. Sun beat down, but he did not complain. He lined up his brushes and resumed his work, ready for whatever customers came his way. His mother would need food and medicine again tonight, and he would make sure she had both. As the day wore on, Arif looked out at the street and thought about tomorrow. He dreamed of one day becoming a teacher so he could help children like himself. He imagined a small classroom in a quiet town where he could share stories and numbers and give other children the same hope he held in his heart. For now, though, he was the Shoeshine boy beneath the nim tree, a helper to his family and a student at school. And each morning, as he opened his eyes to the pale light, he felt ready to work, to learn, and to keep his dreams alive. The afternoon sun hovered low above the rooftops, turning the dusty street into a river of gold. Arif slid off his school shoes and folded his uniform over the back of the low stool. He opened his tin box and arranged the brushes just as he always did. His hands moved automatically, dipping the largest brush into the black polish and swirling it gently. Each soft circle he made on the worn leather of a customer's shoe felt like a small chance to lift his family's hopes one coin at a time. A gentle breeze blew through the street market, carrying the scent of roasting peanuts and fresh cilantro. Vendors called out their prices, and rickshaw drivers leaned against their carts, wiping sweat from their brows. Arif greeted each customer with the same polite nod. A man in a faded blue shirt, a woman carrying a basket of fresh spinach, another schoolboy who barely paused before rushing on. They all paid him small coins, and he tucked each one into his pouch. At the edge of his vision, he noticed a sleek black car ease to a stop. It was out of place on this narrow lane, its engine purring softly as if it did not belong. The car's door opened, and a tall man stepped out. His suit was crisply pressed, the color a deep charcoal that matched the glint of his polished shoes. He carried a leather wallet thick with papers and cards, and he moved quickly, as if every second cost him. Arif watched him approach, struck by the stranger's confident stride. When the man bent down to speak with a rickshaw driver beside a ref's spot, he did not notice that the wallet slipped from his back pocket. A ref saw it fall. He froze for a heartbeat, mouth dry. He knew enough about wallets to guess that this one held more than small coins. It must hold enough money to buy books, shoes, maybe even medicine for his mother. His heart pounded in his chest. He looked down at the smooth black leather lying on the ground and back at the man whose back was still turned. A small voice inside him whispered to run, pick it up, and find something, anything to spend on. His family, but a louder voice stayed him. Honesty. He bit his lip and rose from his stool. The tin box rattled behind him as he closed it gently. He tucked the brushes inside and picked up the wallet. It felt heavy in his hand, the leather cool and unfamiliar. His heart raced, but he kept his feet steady. He'd never chased after a stranger with something so valuable in his small life. The man straightened and walked toward the edge of the street. Arif gathered his courage and followed. Around him, the market bustled, and he weaved between bodies and carts. Leaning forward as if his legs would forget how to run, kept the wallet hidden behind his back, afraid someone might take it or mistake him for a thief. His mind raced. With questions? Would the man be angry? Would he suspect Arif of playing a trick? What would his mother say if he lost it? Arif's lungs burned as he ran. He dodged a stack of wooden crates, slipped past a woman selling spices, and nearly stumbled over a sleeping stray dog curled by a shop door. He kept his eyes on the dark shoes ahead, following the polished heel taps on the dusty ground. Man paused at an intersection, looking left and right. Arif drew nearer, tucked the wallet into the front of his shirt, and gathered his breath. "Excuse me, sir?" he called, voice trembling. The man turned sharply, surprise written across his face. His eyes widened when he saw the boy standing there, chest heaving. Arif held out the wallet. "You've dropped this," he said softly, voice uncertain. "I think it is yours." The man's eyebrows furrowed. He looked from the wallet to Arif's small frame, from Arif's hopeful face to the empty street behind. Seconds passed like hours as the man's expression shifted. Then he stepped forward, reached out, and took the wallet. "You brought this back to me?" he asked, voice low but kind. Arif nodded, unable to speak. He felt a swell of pride. Mixed with relief, the man unlatched the wallet and checked inside. He ran his fingers over the folded bills, the identification cards, and a small photograph. He closed it slowly and slipped it into his breast pocket. "You did the right thing," he said, voice gentle. He studied Arif's eyes for a moment, as if searching for something deeper than the act itself. "My name is Ahmed." "Thank you, Arif." Arif blinked.
His name?
He had not introduced himself. "Yes, sir," he said, voice small. He shifted from one foot to the other, wondering if the moment was really happening or if it would vanish like a dream. Ahmed glanced around as if seeing the busy street for the first time, placed his hand lightly on Arif's shoulder. "Walk with me," he said. "Please. I want to know more." Arif hesitated. He had chores to do, and school books waited for tomorrow. But something in Ahmed's tone told him this was important. He straightened his back and followed. They walked side by side through the market. Ahmed asked questions. About the brushes in Arif's tin, about how long he had been shining shoes, and about where his school was. Arif answered shyly at first, then with more confidence as he saw genuine interest in Ahmed's eyes. He told him about his mother's illness, the days he missed meals to save for her medicine, and how fiercely he wanted to learn at school. Ahmed listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. When Arif finished, he looked at him thoughtfully. "You work hard," he said, "and you care for your family a lot." He reached into his suit pocket again and pulled out a crisp bill. Arif felt his face grow warm when Ahmed handed it to him. It was more money than he ever held at once. "This is for you," Ahmed said. "Buy what you need." Arif shook his head, mouth dry. "I can't take this," he whispered. "I did only what is right." Ahmed smiled and pressed the bill into Arif's hand. "Your honesty is more valuable than money," he said. "Don't say no. Let me help." Arif's eyes filled with tears. He tucked the bill into his pouch, fearing it might slip away, and looked up at Ahmed. The man's dark eyes shone with kindness. And for the first time since he woke that morning, Arif felt hope. They walked together to a small tea shop at the corner. Ahmed ordered 2 cups of sweet milk tea and a plate of fried samosas. They sat at a low table, feet dangling above the uneven pavement. The world around them moved on, vendors shouting, rickshaws rattling past, but here in this moment, time slowed. Ahmed sipped his tea and looked at Arif. "Tell me about your school," he said. "What do you like to learn most?" Arif smiled shyly, spoke about numbers and letters, about stories his teacher read aloud, and the way his classmates laughed at his jokes. Told Ahmed about his dream to become a teacher, to stand at the front of a classroom and share knowledge with children who needed someone to believe in them. Ahmed listened, nodding, and then he surprised Arif by pulling out a small notebook and pen. "I want to remember this," he said. He wrote down his own name and phone number on a fresh page, then handed the notebook to Arif. "If you ever need help books, school fees, or medicine, call me," he said. I will do what I can." Arif clutched the notebook to his chest. Overwhelmed, he nodded, unable to find words that felt big enough. They finished their tea, and Ahmed stood. He placed his hand again on Arif's shoulder. "Be proud of yourself," he said. "Believe in your dreams and work hard. And if you ever forget, look at this notebook and remember that someone believes in you." With that, he tucked his wallet back into his pocket and walked away, leaving Arif standing beneath the neem tree with a heart full of possibility. Arif watched him go until the man's polished shoes were lost in the crowd. Then he opened the notebook, read the letters of his new friend's name, and whispered, "Thank you, Ahmed." He folded the page carefully and slipped the notebook into his shirt pocket. The sun dipped lower in the sky, but Arif did not feel the heat. He felt only promise and determination, as if each step he took from here would lead him closer to the future he dared to imagine. Arif woke early the next morning, light spilling through the thin curtains. The notebook lay on his small desk, its pages filled with Ahmed's name and number. He traced the letters with his finger before slipping the book into his shirt pocket. Today would be important. Today he would call Ahmed. He dressed quickly, smoothing his uniform and tying his shoes. He paused when he heard his mother coughing softly. He slipped into the small room beside his own and found her sitting up on the narrow cot, clutching her chest. Her eyes brightened when she saw him. "Did you sleep well?" she asked, voice weak but warm. He nodded and sat beside her. "I have someone who can help," he said, voice low. He handed her a cup of warm water and smiled. She sipped it gratefully. Outside the street was already stirring. He hurried to his polishing spot beneath the neem tree. He unpacked his tin box and arranged the brushes. As he worked on the first pair of shoes, he thought about how his life had changed in 24 hours. The wallet hadn't felt like lost riches, but the promise of something more, a chance at a better life. He returned each polished shoe with care, but his mind kept drifting to the notebook tucked inside his shirt. When the steady stream of customers paused, he reached for the notebook and slid outside the small circle of shade. He opened it to the page with Ahmed's name and phone number. His thumb hovered over the digits, took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and then dialed. The line rang once, twice, and then a warm voice answered. "Hello, Arif. It's Ahmed." Relief flooded him. His voice shook as he explained where he was. "Oh, meet me at the tea shop in an hour," Ahmed said. "I have something for you." Arif hurried through his customers, thanked each one, and packed his tin box. He changed into his uniform under the neem tree and raced toward the tea shop. He arrived breathless, but Ahmed was already there, waiting at the same low table. Looked different in the morning lights, softer somehow, less distant. He smiled as Arif sat down. "Good morning," he said. "I have news." Arif's heart pounded. "What is it?" he whispered. Ahmed reached into his briefcase and pulled out a stack of papers tied with a ribbon. He untied the ribbon and laid the papers on the table. "This is an application for a full scholarship at the Beacon School," he said. "They have a program for bright students in need. I spoke to the principal yesterday and they agreed to review your file." Arif's eyes widened. "A scholarship?" he repeated, voice barely above a whisper. Ahmed nodded. "It covers tuition, books, uniform, everything. You will need to sit an entrance exam next week. I will help you prepare." Tears pricked at Arif's eyes, covered his face with his hands for a moment, and when he lowered them, his cheeks were wet. "Thank you," he said, voice small. "I promise to work hard." Ahmed placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "I know you will," he said. "But first, let us make sure your mother is all right." He signaled to the tea shop owner, who brought fresh cups of tea and biscuits. Arif told Ahmed about his mother's cough and the days she had gone without medicine. Ahmed listened carefully, then handed Arif an envelope. "This is for her medicine," he said. "Take it to the pharmacy." Arif tucked the envelope inside his shirt and nodded. He thanked Ahmed again and left the tea shop. He walked to the nearby pharmacy, clutching the envelope. When he handed it to the pharmacist, the man smiled and began to fill the prescription. Arif waited, shifting from foot to foot. The pharmacist handed him the medicine, and counted change from a small pile of coins. Arif thanked him and hurried home, his steps light for the first time in months. His mother sat at the table waiting for her medicine and tea. When he showed her the package, her eyes filled with tears. "Where did this come from?" she asked, voice thick. He smiled. "Friend," he said. "He believes in us." She hugged him tightly and he held her close, feeling warmth and hope fill his chest. That afternoon, he returned to school and found Mrs. Latif waiting at the door. "I saw you packing up early," she said gently. Arif hesitated, then told her about Ahmed and the scholarship application. She beamed. "This is wonderful news," she said. I will help you study for the exam." She invited him into her classroom after school, and together they went over arithmetic problems and reading passages. Arif absorbed every word, asking questions when he was unsure. He felt his confidence grow with each correct answer. Outside, dusk settled over the city, and the call to prayer echoed through the streets. Arif packed his school bag and hugged his teacher. "Thank you," he said. "I will not let you down." She smiled and patted his back. "You will do just fine," she said. He returned to his polishing spot beneath the neem tree. The market was quieter now, and only a few customers remained. He polished shoes with his usual care, but his mind was focused on the exam, on his mother's health, and on the promise of a different future. He counted the coins in his pouch and tucked in the envelope of change from the pharmacist, careful not to lose any. Night fell, and Arif closed his tin box. He walked home under the glow of streetlights, his notebook safe in his bag. At home, his mother sat by the small lantern, threading a needle to mend his uniform. She paused as he entered and smiled. "How was your day?" she asked. He sat beside her and told her everything, meeting Ahmed, the scholarship, the exam, the medicine. She listened, nodding, and when he finished, she placed her hand on his cheek. "You bring me so much joy," she said softly. "I am proud of you, my son." Arif hugged her and held the moment close. In the quiet of their small home, he felt the weight of worry lighten. He thought of tomorrow's exam preparation, of the new teachers and the work ahead. He thought of the children at Beacon School and of the life he could build with each lesson learned. He closed his eyes, feeling hope bloom in his heart. The next morning he woke again before dawn, full of determination. He walked to meet Ahmed. At the tea shop, where they spent hours practicing exam questions, Ahmed taught him techniques for reading faster, for checking his work, and for staying calm under pressure. Arif listened and learned, scribbling notes in his notebook and asking questions whenever he was unsure. When Ahmed praised his answers, Arif felt a surge of pride. "You are ready," Ahmed said at the end of their session. Arif nodded, trying to still the nerves fluttering in his stomach. The day of the exam arrived. Arif stood outside Beacon School, wearing a clean uniform and polished shoes, a stark contrast to the dusty streets where he spent so many days. He clutched his bag and took a deep breath. The walls of the school were tall and painted white, with green vines climbing over the gate. Inside, other students gathered, chatting and holding their papers. Arif's heart pounded, but he remembered Ahmed's words: "Believe in yourself, work hard, and you will succeed." He found his desk in the exam hall and opened the paper. The questions looked challenging, but he remembered the hours of practice. He wrote carefully, showing his work for each arithmetic problem, underlining key words in the reading passages, and checking each answer twice. When time was called, he closed his paper and stood, felt exhausted but proud of himself. Weeks passed before the results came. Each day, Arif returned to his polishing spot, swept the street, and saved his coins. He studied by lamplight with his mother, whose cough had grown milder thanks to the medicine. His dreams felt closer with each passing day, and the notebook in his bag reminded him of the promise Ahmed had made. One evening, as the sky turned orange, Ahmed appeared beside the neem tree. Arif's heart leaped. Ahmed smiled and handed him an envelope. Arif opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a letter from Beacon School announced his acceptance and scholarship. He read the words over and over, each line bringing tears to his eyes. Ahmed patted his shoulder. "You did it," he said. I knew you would. Arif stood beneath the nim tree, envelope in hand, and looked at the sky. He thought of his mother, of his teacher, of the borrowed hope that had become real. He thought of the young Shoeshine boy who once dreamed of a better life. He felt that boy standing beside him now, stronger and full of promise. And he knew that this was only the beginning. The morning sun made the narrow lane glow as Ahmed walked up to the small blue door of Arif's home. He carried a leather briefcase in one hand and a warm smile on his face. Arif stood beside his mother in the doorway, his school bag slung over one shoulder and his heart beating fast. He had told his mother that a friend would come today, but he did not know exactly what would happen. Now, seeing Ahmed standing there, he felt a mix of excitement and nerves. Good morning, Ahmed said kindly. He nodded at Arif's mother. Assalamu alaikum, she replied softly, voice weak but full of hope. Ahmed stepped inside, taking care not to trip over the few pots and pans lined against the wall. The room was small and simple. A single mattress lay on the floor, and a narrow shelf held a few worn books and a battered radio. The walls were bare, painted once in bright, white but now faded by time. Arif guided Ahmed to a wooden stool. He offered him tea in chipped cups, and his mother poured water from a kettle on a small stove in the corner. The steam curled up in the air, carrying the scent of cardamom from the tea leaves. It was a cozy moment, filled with quiet promise. Wanted to see where you live, Ahmed said as he sipped the tea. I know things have been hard. He looked around with respect, as if the room itself held its own quiet dignity. Arif's mother smiled, her eyes moist. We managed, she said. Arif works very hard to help us. Ahmed set down his cup and opened his briefcase. He pulled out a stack of forms and a small checkbook. Arif's eyes widened. Ahmed handed one form to Arif's mother. This is to cover Arif's school fees for the entire year, he explained gently. And this check will pay for his books, his uniform, and even his exam fees. He reached into his suit pocket and took out another envelope. And this is for your medical bills, he added, handing it to her. I spoke to a doctor at the city hospital. He will see you next week. Arif's mother pressed her hand to her chest, tears forming in her eyes. Thank you, she whispered, voice trembling. May. Allah bless you, she said. Ahmed nodded and smiled. You are welcome, he answered. But remember, you did this by your own honesty and hard work. You deserve this chance. Arif knelt beside his mother and hugged her tight. He felt her thin body shake with emotion. He looked up at Ahmed. I don't know how to say thank you enough, he said, voice thick. Ahmed patted his shoulder. Show me in your work, he replied. Study hard. Take care of your mother, and share what you learn with others when you can. After the tea and the paperwork, Ahmed asked to see the small courtyard behind the house. And a gentle breeze stirred the leaves of a neem sapling planted in a corner. Arif's mother stood by the door, watching them. Ahmed knelt beside the sapling, gently touching its young branches. This tree will grow strong, he said, looking up at Arif, just like you. They spent a few minutes talking about the future. Ahmed promised to arrange a tutor who would come twice a week to help Arif prepare for his classes and exams. He also said he would visit again to see how his mother was doing. As they spoke, neighbors peered from their doors and windows, curious at the sight of the well-dressed man visiting the little blue house when Ahmed stood to leave. Arif and his mother walked him to the gate. Arif offered to carry the briefcase, but Ahmed refused with a laugh. He shook Arif's hand firmly. I believe in you, he said. Arif felt his chest swell with pride. He watched Ahmed walk away, each step filling him with determination. That afternoon, after Ahmed left, Arif cleaned the small courtyard. He swept away fallen leaves and straightened a cracked clay pot that held a few marigold plants. His mother sat on the doorstep, mending a piece of cloth. When he finished, he joined her and shared what had happened. He showed her the forms and the check, pointing to each line. She listened quietly, a gentle smile spreading across her face. Then she took his hand. You have given me hope, she said. For the first time in months, she felt strong enough to stand and walk to the small, infirmary car that Ahmed had arranged. The following week, a doctor named Dr. Siddiqui came to their home. He wore a white coat and carried a small bag of instruments. He listened to RF's mother's chest, asked questions about her cough, and nodded thoughtfully. He wrote a prescription and explained how to take the medicine. Then he said, "Return in 2 weeks, and we will see how you are doing." RF watched as his mother followed Dr. Siddiqui's instructions with care. He saw her energy return, little by little. She smiled more. Her cough grew softer, and she began to walk with a brighter step. Each time Dr. Siddiqui visited, he praised her progress and offered gentle advice. RF felt a warm gratitude toward Ahmed for bringing help to their door to school. Days passed in a new rhythm. RF no longer worried about missing meals because he had the support he needed. He woke each morning full of energy. He studied with his tutor, a university student named Samina, who came as Ahmed had arranged. Sumina sat with him under the nim tree in the lane or in the quiet room of the house, helping him understand lessons he once found hard. They laughed at his mistakes and celebrated each correct answer. Arif's confidence grew, and so did his. Grades. One evening, after a long study session, Arif and his mother sat together on the rooftop, watching the sun sink behind the distant hills. The sky turned shades of orange and pink. Arif's mother held a cup of tea in her hands. She looked at her son and said, "You have made all this happen." Arif shook his head. "You have," he replied, and Ahmed helped. "But I will keep working, mother. We will build our future together." The days turned into weeks. The little blue house seemed brighter. The neem sapling grew new leaves. The marigolds bloomed in the clay pot. The neighbors noticed the change too. They smiled at Arif and his mother when they passed by. Some even stopped to ask how things were. Arif told them honestly about Ahmed's kindness and the help he had received. Then came a day when Ahmed returned again. This time he brought a reporter from a local newspaper. The reporter asked to write a short piece about Arif's story, how a young Shoeshine boy had returned a CEO's wallet and, by his honesty, had changed his own life. At first, Arif hesitated, feeling shy, but his mother nudged him gently. "Story can help others," she said. "Tell them the truth, and they will see that honesty matters." So Arif smiled for a photograph, standing beside his mother and Ahmed. He held the small notebook where Ahmed had written his name and number. The reporter asked him questions, and Arif answered simply, his voice steady. "I did what I thought was right," he said. And then so many good things happened. Ahmed and his mother looked on with pride. When the article appeared in the newspaper the next day, neighbors brought copies to the house. Arif saw his own photo on the front page. He read the words under his picture: "Young boy returns wallet, rises with honesty and hard work." He felt a burst of joy. He knew the story would inspire others to choose honesty, to believe that small acts can change big things. That night, under a sky full of stars, Arif lay on the rooftop beside his mother. He thought of the day he found that wallet, of the moment he decided to return it, and of how a kind man had stepped into his life. He felt proud, not because of the money or the help, but because he had stayed true to himself. In that quiet moment, he made a promise. He would carry his honesty always, no matter where life took him. The tiny crack in the blue door of their house no longer seemed a sign of struggle, but a symbol of a life repaired by kindness and truth. As he drifted to sleep, Arif held on to the promise he felt deep in his heart, that honesty and courage would guide him through every challenge, and that one small act could change many lives forever. Arif woke before dawn, his heart beating with a quiet excitement. Today was his first day at Beacon School, under the scholarship that had changed his life. He dressed carefully in his new uniformer, crisp white shirt, green trousers, and a neat tie. He polished his shoes until they shone, remembering how far he had come from the dusty street corner. He paused by the mirror, straightened his shirt collar, and took a deep breath. His mother waited with a cup of warm tea and a small plate of fresh paratha. Her eyes shone with pride as she watched him sit down. "You look very handsome," she said softly. Arif smiled and hugged her. He told her he would return before sunset and share every detail of the day. She nodded, placing her hand gently on his cheek. "Go and learn," she said. "This is your chance." Arif felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, but it felt good, like a gentle call to be his best self. He carried his bag and notebook through the small blue door, stepping into the courtyard where the neem sapling stood tall. The marigolds at its base waved in the early breeze. He looked back to see his mother standing in the doorway, watching him go. He raised his hand in a small wave, and she smiled and nodded. Then he turned and walked swiftly toward Beacon School. The road to Beacon was long and crowded, but Arif walked with confidence. He passed street vendors setting up their stalls and neighbors who greeted him with smiles. Some children from his old neighborhood ran past him, shouting greetings. "Good luck," they called. Arif waved back, feeling a warm glow. He reached the tall white gates of Beacon School and paused for a moment to take it all in. Inside, the grounds were full of green lawns and flowering shrubs. Students in uniforms talked in small groups, laughed, and adjusted their backpacks. Arif's chest tightened with nervousness, but he remembered Ahmed's words. Believe in yourself. Work hard, and you will succeed. He clutched his bag strap and stepped forward. A teacher in a blue dress approached him with a kind smile. "You must be Arif," she said gently. "Welcome to Beacon School. I'm Mrs. Ahmed, no relation to your friend. Let me show you to your classroom." Arif nodded, following her through the corridors. The walls were lined with bright posters of maps, mathematical formulas, and famous poets. He felt as if he were walking inside a book of possibility. His classroom was spacious, with large windows that let in golden light. A neat row of desks faced a chalkboard where the schedule for the day was already written. Mrs. Ahmed introduced him to the class. Some students turned to look with curious eyes. Few whispered to each other, but most smiled and nodded. She showed him to a desk beside a girl named Sana, who offered him a friendly smile. "Welcome," she said softly. "I'm here if you need anything." Arif smiled back, grateful for her kindness. He sat down, unpacked his books, and placed his notebook on the desk. The room quieted as the principal entered, a tall man with a gentle face. He welcomed all the new students, speaking of the school's values: honesty, hard work, and kindness. He spoke of Arif's story too, without naming him, as an example of integrity and courage. Arif felt his cheeks grow warm as he listened. Classes began with English. The teacher asked each student to introduce themselves and say what they hoped to learn. When it was Arif's turn, he stood and spoke clearly. He told them his name, that he loved numbers and stories, and that he dreamed of one day teaching. Others, the class, listened, and some applauded lightly. Arif sat down, feeling as if he had taken a small but important step. The morning passed in a blur of lessons. He wrote equations in math class, painted a landscape in art, and read a short story in language class. Each lesson felt like a gift: new ideas, new words, new ways of seeing the world. He asked questions when he did not understand, and his teachers answered patiently. At break time, he and Santa sat under a tree and shared jokes. She showed him where the water fountain was and where the library lay. He told her about the neem tree by his home and about Ahmed's kindness. She listened with wide eyes and said she could not wait to meet his mother. When the lunch bell rang, Arif carried his bag to the cafeteria. He found a spot at a long table and unpacked the simple meal his mother had made: roti, lentils, and a small fruit. As he ate, other students came by and introduced themselves. They asked about his journey to Beacon, and he told them in plain, honest words. They admired his courage and welcomed him warmly. He felt like he belonged. The afternoon, lessons were more challenging: science, experiments, and history discussions. At one point, teacher invited students to share thoughts about the story of a great leader who had stood up for what was right. Arif thought of his own small stand, returning that wallet on the dusty street, and raised his hand. He spoke of honesty and how one act can change many lives. The class was silent, listening, and when he finished, there was a round of applause. Arif sat down, heart pounding but proud. When the final bell rang, he gathered his things and took a moment to breathe in the cool air. He found Mrs. Ahmed. "In the corridor, you did well today," she said kindly. "We are glad to have you here." He thanked her and promised to work hard. He walked out of the gate. the evening sun casting long shadows on the ground. The walk home felt different now. He carried stories to tell of friendly teachers, of classmates who would become friends, of lessons that would shape his future. He thought of his mother waiting for him and quickened his pace. When he reached the small blue door, he saw her standing with the notebook in her hand. She smiled and hugged him tight. "How was it?" she asked. He told her every detail, from the morning assembly to the history discussion. He told her about Sana, about the applause, and about his deep happiness. She listened, eyes shining, and then she handed him a cup of tea and a small snack. "I feel like I went there with you," she said. "I am so proud." That night, under the soft light of the lantern, Arif opened his notebook and began writing. Down the day's lessons, he wrote the names of his teachers, the things he learned, and the questions he still had. He wrote a promise to study every day and to help his mother whenever he could. After he finished, he closed the notebook and whispered, "Thank you, Ahmed," as if the notebook could carry the words to him. Days turned into weeks, and each morning Arif traveled to Beacon with eager steps. Mother's health improved. Her cough no longer woke her at night. She spent her days tending the small garden in the courtyard, planting marigolds and watering the neem sapling. Together they prepared simple meals and shared stories each evening. He helped her around the house, and they talked about what he learned in school. At Beacon, Arif joined the school newspaper as a writer. He wrote about small acts of kindness in his community and shared his own story in a special edition. Paper printed his article and distributed it to the students and teachers. His words inspired others to look for ways they could help. He felt proud to use his voice for good. One afternoon, he received a letter from Ahmed. The note read simply, "Proud of you. Keep going. Believe in yourself." Arif read it over and over, smiling. He showed the letter to his mother, and they placed it carefully on the mantel above the stove. It felt like a treasure, a reminder that someone believed in him. The school year passed, and Arif finished at the top of his class. At the closing ceremony, he was invited to speak. He stood at the podium, wearing his neat uniform and holding the notebook where Ahmed's name was written on the first page. He looked out at the crowd, students, teachers, parents, and his mother in the front row. He spoke of the power of honesty, of the kindness of a stranger, and of the dreams that grow when someone believes in you. He spoke from his heart, in simple words that carried great meaning. When he finished, the hall erupted in applause. He felt tears in his eyes as he bowed his head. After the ceremony, his mother and he walked home under a sky full of stars. She held his hand and said, "You have made my dreams come true." He smiled and looked at the notebook in his bag. He knew that this was only the beginning of his story, out of the students he would one day teach, of the community he would help, and of the promise he had made beneath the neem tree. As they reached the blue door, he paused and put his arm around his mother's shoulders. "We did this together," he said softly. She nodded and leaned her head against his. In that moment, under the quiet night sky, Arif felt a warm certainty. His small act of honesty had changed his life forever, and now, with hope and hard work, he would change many more.